future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
And greetings and salutations, everyone, and everyone in our audience. You have tuned into Dr. Judy, WTF, right here at the Universal Broadcasting Radio Network here in the heart of Hollywood. We broadcast live at the Sunset Gower Studios. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and in studio, as usual, is Dr. Judy Rosenberg, the founder of the Psychological Healing Center, with offices, only 2 at the moment, actually 3, in Beverly Hills, Sherman Oaks, and where you can hear this voice.
Right here on the couch.
Right here on the couch.
Third office.
And we ask you to get on the couch to Dr. Judy. It is actually a call-in show. Our show is called Dr. Judy WTF, which is What the Freud, although every once in a while it's What the Film. And our telephone number is area code 323-843-2826. And later in the show, we are going to shrink that tune, which is a popular thing we do at the end of the show. And you can pull us if you're listening to us not live. It's Stitcher and iTunes. Our show today is very, very timely because this week, a very popular magazine with a very popular photo popped in, and it introduced an individual to the world, Caitlyn Jenner. So we are really going to be talking about transgenders today. So if you have any experience in that, there's only 700 million of you in the United States, although some claim it's more. Would love to hear from you because we're
700 million?
I'm sorry, 700,000.
Oh, that sounded
1.5
like
million.
a huge number.
There's only 330 million in the United States.
Thank you. Okay.
700,000, excuse me.
Okay.
Just under a million. So we're going to talk about the former Olympian and all-star athlete and Wheaties eater, Bruce Caitlyn Jenner. He's
no longer Bruce.
No, it's now Catilyn, yes.
Caitlyn.
And he set a record this week on Twitter when he introduced his Twitter account. In 4 hours, he was able to get 1 million followers. And in 4 days, he got 2.5 million followers.
And now you have to call him or her.
You got to call her and her.
That's
and what's
right.
interesting, I went to Wikipedia, which we're going to read a little bit from, and Wikipedia has already changed. If you punch in Bruce Jenner, you already get Caitlyn, and all the gender stuff from he to she's been changed. It's really interesting. And he has 1.5 million followers already on Instagram. So that's where it's at.
I really would love you to call in, and if you have been through a transgender transformation, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to know your experience and some of the challenges that you had along the pathway, and some of the moments where you feel very happy or proud of what you stepped into, and really very much would love to hear from you.
Or vulnerable, or some of the harrowing, because I'm going to go some numbers in a minute. It's no picnic. It isn't. It's getting easier, and that's what Caitlyn has done, is exposed it more than anybody, but it's not easy. What I want to do is start a little bit, one thing here. As you well know, he is on a little TV show that's gotten over 465, I think it is, episodes, called The Kardashians, right? Mm-hmm. And this one was interesting. It's to strip away the reality show and the tabloid headlines, and the Kardashians are just a family. A large, blended family, an extended, close-knit, crazy, messy family that loves each other, and is dealing with some complicated issues and doing their best to work through them. Does that sound familiar?
Sounds like most families.
Yes. Yeah. Because even if you cannot, and this is important, relate to this specific situation, everyone knows what it's like to have a family dynamic dramatically change, and how scary it is to realize that nothing is going to be the same. Everyone has that moment when you learn that someone you love has been keeping a very huge secret. You wonder if you can ever look at them the same way, if you can trust them, if you can really know anyone, if anyone will ever really be okay again.
And that concept brings up the concept that I love very much, which is that we're all interconnected. Whether we like it or not, we are interconnected. And when somebody makes a ripple in the pond, it reverberates to other people. And so whatever people do, understand that it has an impact. So whatever you do has an impact on the people most significantly in your inner circle, and then also significantly in your community, and of course significantly in the world. Now imagine if one of your family members, or let's say it is your significant other, your husband, your wife, or your child, or your father or your mother decides to change sex. Now, that's a really big deal, because we're built on a mother-father system. I talk a lot about mother-infant disconnect, about father-infant disconnect, and when I mention these topics, I'm talking also very generally in that not everyone has a mother and a father. I treat people who have mothers and mothers, and I have people who are fathers and fathers raising children. So there's this concept that's been split into mother-father. Of course, there's genetics behind it as well. But the key that I am emphasizing is a primary caregiver. Okay,
Yes.
so when you have a primary caregiver who's the primary role, that's usually mother, and if there's a disconnect, it's going to have huge reverberations on the mental health of the infant, and then the emerging child and adult. And so today we're going to be looking at a lot of very interesting information about transgender transformation, and really ask some hard-line questions like, is it mentally healthy? When is it mentally healthy? When isn't it mentally healthy? How young should one be before one decides that, or the parents sanction such a decision?
Life-changing decision.
A life-changing decision.
Yeah.
What happens when people change their mind? And what about the suicidality rate, which goes up? And last week, it was actually last week or 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of being interviewed by both CBS and KCAL on this. It was last week. Thanks. And
so long ago.
So long ago. Time flies. And so I was asked about Caitlyn Jenner, and that gave me the idea to expand it into this show and make it a topic, which, Walt, I thought you thought it was a good idea too. And so here we are, and so much information. Walt has put a lot of time into researching, and of course I'm going to be shrinking a lot of the information, analyzing it, and so go ahead. What have you been reading?
Well, you talked about family, and that's what's important. And remember, our show's about healing human disconnect. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that we're all seeking and want is unconditional love.
Right.
And this was very, very prevalent in what I read with what Caitlyn did. He has 6 children of his own and 4 stepchildren. So she wanted to make sure that first and foremost and primarily everything was okay with each one of those 10 kids.
Right.
Kardashian or not. And so the underlying fear was a major theme in Bruce's interview that he had with Diane Sawyer. Now, what's interesting is almost, I think it was 18 million people watched it, which is gigantic. Yeah. It was huge for anybody between 25 and 59 years old. Mm-hmm. So he wanted to make that. So he said one thing was his youngest daughter, Cassandra, in particular, may have had caused a few viewers to reach for tissues. She recalled a conversation illustrates no matter what age, when you see your parent going through something, you emotionally revert back to a kid who just wants your mom and your dad to make everything okay. Right. And she said, Dad, what do I call you? And he said, you can call me Dad. I will always be your dad.
Wow. I see some tears there.
So, I mean, this is tough stuff, all right? And
yeah, it is.
he went through a lot, and he didn't do this. As we're going to go through the interview a little bit for publicity. I mean, she is 65 years old, and has been living a lie all his life, and finally decided to go through the process and finally come out and change genders. So everyone watching, this is the last thing he said in the interview I wanted to kind of start with. So everyone watching, if you could just say to them, when you think of me, please have an open mind and open heart. I'm not a bad person. I'm just doing what I have to do. Mm-hmm. Okay. Dealing with the transgender issue, as I said, there's 700,000 of us here in the United States, and an estimated 19 million reported to have engaged in same-sex sexual behavior. So, I mean, it's a part of it, but there's more to it. Where are the numbers I had? Oh, here they are. This is actually regarding issues with youth and transgenders' youth. In adults, it's worse, and I thought these were just amazing statistics. 33% of transgenders' youth have attempted suicide. 1 in 3.
33%
1 in 3
have attempted suicide. Is this after the?
No, this is youth. This is when they're trying to figure it all out.
Oh, but is this after they've undergone the trans?
No, this is youth. This is when they're trying to figure out what they are.
Okay. Yeah.
55% have reported being physically attacked. 74% have reported being sexually harassed at school. 90% of the transgenders' youth report feeling unsafe at school because of their gender expression. Mm-hmm. 78% reported having been verbally harassed. And lastly, 48% have been a victim of assault, including a weapon or sexual assault or rape. And you have to remember a lot of these numbers probably are higher because these are the ones that are reported.
Right.
And
right. So no kidding that this population suffers from non-acceptance.
Absolutely.
And so
it's a very brave thing that Caitlyn did.
And that's something that I want to express tonight is that I think that what Caitlyn really, really wanted was to be comfortable in her own skin. She wanted to live an authentic life. It's not like this decision was a fly-by-night thing.
Oh, no.
I don't think it's a publicity stunt.
No.
I've heard people say, well, did she want more ratings? No, I don't think people go through that much in order to get more ratings. I suppose, in a very strange world, people go through a lot to get more ratings, but
well, even before,
I
just to interrupt you, before Bruce Jenner has been married, Caitlyn Jenner has been married 3 times, and of course his last marriage was the longest, 24 years, to Kris Kardashian, and he was actually in hormonal therapy before he met her, and he stopped it, and went through all the stuff that they did with the Kardashians, and then of course made the decision to start it up again. He said he was living a lie. We're going to get into that. So she
knew that he was on.
Yes,
on
all of his wives knew that they had issues in this area.
I see.
What's very interesting is when you look back, Bruce Jenner was an Olympic athlete. He was a man's man. I mean, he was an all-star, primo, gold medal triathlon. A triathlon means you have to do 10 things really well to win it, and he knocked it out of the park. Mm-hmm. And here we go. I think this is what I mean. In the Olympics in Montreal in 1976, he set a world record for triathlon, and some feel that triathlons are the world's greatest athlete. So we have a guy who was the world's greatest athlete, went on TV to eat Wheaties and everything else, also suffered from dyslexia, and as a result of his fame of being an Olympic gold medalist, that was it. He wanted to be famous. And he liked people. He really didn't. The fame had its own thing, but he liked to be around people. Mm-hmm. One thing was the day after, for example, that he won the triathlon, he was playing tennis with a buddy, and his buddy says, "Hey, I'm a member," and this was in New York. city. He says, I'm a member of a club. Let's go play at my club. And he says, no, I want to be around people. And it wasn't that he wanted to be a publicity hound. He just liked being around folks. And so they went to a public park and were playing tennis. And, of course, people recognized him. And the crowds were just crazy, went crazy.
Yeah.
And it was like that for quite a while.
So there's even more to it than with somebody who is not in the limelight, because he at that time had a specific image and was associated with this great fame of being a triathlete, and so therefore the morphing over to transgender had a lot of mental shifts that the public had to make about him and is having to make about him. Because,
absolutely. Because their perception of him is something totally different.
Yeah, it's like, So I talk a lot about the psychoperceptual lens. And so in this case, what we have is a psychoperceptual lens of Bruce Jenner in the past, and then the struggling with the coming out, and then the actual morphing into who she is today. And then I wanted to bring more into it about the interconnection, because whatever she is doing today has a great big impact, as Walt, you're saying, that the family members are also having to go through this huge adjustment. So it's not just she having to go through the adjustment, but the ripple effect. So now these 10 kids have to go through the adjustment, and certainly his exes have to go through the adjustment, and the community at large, and obviously, this is really pushing a lot of buttons in both directions.
Because,
the
the perception,
and a negative.
Come on, he was Mr.
Sense.
America,
Yeah.
right? He's a man's man,
Right.
out there being one of the greatest athletes as a guy, and all of a sudden, presto changeo. Right?
And I think that if there's any era that people can expect or hope for more acceptance, it would be this era, because and especially Southern California. I think Southern California is one of the more liberal areas in the world where there's a lot of acceptance to differences in looks, differences in sexual expression, differences in sexuality. And I think what becomes very important is the community and how the community regards it, because one of the things that I obviously speak a lot about in my therapeutic setting is the effects of criticism, judgment, shame, blame on a human being.
What are other people going to think?
What are other people going to think? And it's like throwing acid at a person. When you judge them, when you blame them, when you shame them, it's just very, very caustic to the psyche. It's very caustic to the soul, and it all starts with mother-infant disconnect, because the more we're disconnected from, the more we have reactions to these wounds, and then we encode these wounds into these horrible encoded negative core beliefs, like I'm not lovable, I'm not wanted, and I'm not this and I'm not that. And I would just love to have the opportunity. So Caitlyn, if you are listening, I would love to have the opportunity to sit down with you, and if you'd be willing to delve into your background, into those wounds from the first few years of life, and really psychoeducate people in terms of, because I think there are a lot of questions out there amongst analysts, psychoanalysts, psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists. Is this healthy? Is this an expression of mental unhealth? And I don't think that the answer is such a clear answer. I think it all depends, because when we do things that are reactions to the wound, then maybe those behaviors are born out of unhealth. But at a certain point in life, we're all a little unhealthy or a lot unhealthy, and then our life bends in a certain direction, and then we at some point choose it. And we say, I don't care anymore where this wound came from. Not that you don't care, but that it is what it is at a certain point. And then at that point, you make choices. And at that point, you get behind these choices in either a very, very substantial way, like actually undergoing surgery or starting to express the lifestyle by living the lifestyle before undergoing the surgery.
Well, only about 25 or 30% actually go through the surgery. But here's a couple of quotes just to back you up that Bruce said in the interview. Maybe this is why God put me on this earth, to deal with this issue. If this is the only problem I have in life, I've got it made. If this is what it is, I'll be okay. And this last one is, I'm saying goodbye to people's perception of me and who I am. I'm not saying goodbye to me, because this has always been me. Okay? And, as he starts the interview, he says, for all intents and purposes, I am a woman. He's gone through, a 10-hour surgery, and also went through, what's the word? Oh,
the hormone replacement.
The hormone replacement,
right?
but the transgeal shave, which is the shaving of her Adam's apple.
Okay.
And he says, my brain is much more feminine than it is male. It's hard for people to understand that, but that is what my soul is. I've always been very confused with my gender identity. He says in his 2-hour special. What's interesting is a very other large popular person in celebrity has come out this week and said pretty much the same thing. And we did a show on her last year a little bit. Miley Cyrus. This came out just today.
Really?
I do not relate to being a boy or a girl.
Okay.
She's been admitted to being bisexual by the time she was age of 14, and everything that's legal, I'm down with. I'm down with any adult, anyone over the age of 18 who is down to love me. I don't relate to being a boy or a girl, and I don't have to have my partner relate to a boy or a girl.
Well, in essence, we all fall along a spectrum of sexuality.
Yes.
So there's no such thing as never having any feelings for a person of the same sex or the opposite sex. Somewhere along this continuum, we feel our feelings. And if we're heterosexual, that does not mean that we don't have feelings toward people of the same sex. And I think what people are doing today is they're really asking themselves some very honest questions, and because we have a lot less psychosocial stress on self-expression, they're going for it. They're going for the self-expression of it.
Well, what's interesting is he said here that, back in the 60s, for goodness sakes, he says it was extremely difficult to feel like the gender of his body was different than the gender that he felt. And there was nobody he could talk to about it. I mean, it wasn't
acceptable.
Right. I'm a lonely boy. I'm still a lonely big boy, Jenner says. How he's naturally not very outgoing person and tends to spend a lot of time alone. Sexually was totally different than what my issues were. Sexuality was totally different than what my issues were. And I always felt heterosexual. He added, I've never been with a man. I am not gay. And as far as I know, I am heterosexual. So I thought that was kind of interesting in terms of what he's doing. He says that sexual orientation and gender identity are not the same thing. Okay, we'll repeat that. Sexual orientation and gender identity are not the same thing. Let's go with, quote, asexual for now. I'm going to learn a lot in the next year. And then he says, when he early on to, I think it was his first wife, he said, this is not something that you can overcome, fix, or pray away.
And I think that he had the ability to sit with it for a really, really long time. So this is no fly-by-night decision by any stretch of the imagination. And so Catilyn is now a role model, I think, for other people. I think that other people who feel lonely out there in their role of gender, their expression of sexuality, or their role in the gender role, as Catilyn put it, they're two distinct things. There is a community out there. There are many resources. There's the lesbian, gay, bisexual
LGBT.
Thank you. LGBT. That's what I was looking for. Community, and if you or any family member is feeling isolated as a result of this, then you can reach out to this community. I think
Absolutely.
You can Google them, and there's lots of information about that. And so there's really no reason to feel lonely. I think that part of the reason people commit suicide after this transformation is because they do feel lonely. And one of the things that I cannot overemphasize is group support, community support, family support. So when people make the decision to morph, then they really need to sit down with their significant others.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Their family.
Their family. And if the family isn't behind it, then that's going to make life really difficult for that individual. So that person has to get into a community, because whatever it is that we're up to and whatever it is that's authentic to us, it's kind of like you plant a tree, right? And you want to root the tree. And in order to strengthen the tree, you've got to have the soil around it. You've got to have the right temperature. You've got to have the right environment around it for the tree to take root and live. Now, I know biologically this root is not biologically male or female as a tree is biologically, but it doesn't matter, because we're talking about rooting your emotions into something that you want to root into. And so that's why it's so important to have a community around you, so that you can begin to feel normal, that you can have routine around you, and of course other people to talk to and relate to, because healing human disconnect is the answer to those feelings that go along with feeling disconnected. When we go into our whole and we go into our inner implosions and our depressions, or when we get angry and we express and unleash. So we don't need to do either. We don't need to implode. We don't need to explode. We need to unload.
That's what we say. And for those of you that are just tuning in, we are Dr. Judy WTF, which is What the Freud, here at the UBN Radio Network. We are having a discussion about transgenderism and Caitlyn Jenner. And if you can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes, and for those of you who want, now you can see us. We've got almost half our shows up on YouTube. So just go to YouTube and punch in Dr. Judy WTF, and you can see us. Now
I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah,
if there's anybody out there that has gone through this process, I would love to hear from you. I know the audience would love to hear from you.
You can write us at info@drjudywtf.com, or you can call her in. It's not too late. 323-843-2826. I love this one line about the transition of expectations of Bruce. By now, the buff heartthrob of America's disco era is poised again to be the center of attention. And it was interesting that he's really just a plain old regular guy. But again, on the interview with Diane Sawyer, he said down here, he was very, and this is another interesting thing that I think is tough to people accept. He was very, very, very competitive. I mean, he's an Olympic athlete, and he was qualifying to become in the Olympics. He had one more heat to run, and he was just about 5 seconds behind, and he picked it up and won by like 10 seconds above anybody else. Well, so he's just amazingly an amazing athlete back in the day, and probably still is very competitive. So you got to believe that this was not an easy decision. He started electrolysis after he divorced his second wife back in 1986, because he felt that he visited a doctor and started it because he also started taking female hormones at that point, and he took them for almost 5 years. He did the electrolysis on his beard and his chest, but then he met Kris Kardashian, and 5 months after he met her, they got married. And of course, this was years before all the stuff it's on the reality show.
And don't forget that these hormonal changes have an effect on the biochemicals in a human being's brain. And so there are going to be large changes associated with the cycle of the mood changes that go along with it.
Yes.
So speaking of impact on other human beings, I'm imagining that that Bruce at the time probably went through a lot of depression around this.
He did. He did.
And so I can't overemphasize the importance of having a lot of psychotherapy before making such a decision. Psychotherapy so that you really, really get clear on your reasons as to why you want to make these changes. You really get clear on the impact it's going to have not only on you, but the people around you. And the impact is so wide, even on an level of employment. Okay, imagine you hire a man, right? And then they take a break and then they come back as a female, and everyone at the office related to this person as a male, and now the person has a new name and a new wardrobe and so on. So it's just such a huge topic, and I think that people need to really build in adjustment.
Well, we're gonna touch on that in just a quick second. But what if did that? You gave me an article of a former Johns Hopkins head psychiatrist who is also someone who is transgender, and he addresses this issue primarily.
He was transgender?
Yes, he is. Yeah. And he addresses the issue as it relates to children. He says, the best way to help your child if you're going through this, because this is one talking from a psychiatrist perspective and one who's done it and experienced it and lived it himself. Okay? He says to help children struggling with their gender is not surgery, but devoted parenting.
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay? I mean, sure, the child may want to do that down the road.
So he went from male to female?
It's probably from female to male because he's a male at this juncture.
Okay.
He says, the sense of being transgendered constitutes a mental disorder in two respects. The first, he says, is that it does not correspond with physical reality. The second, more importantly, is that not treating transgender disorder properly, quote, can lead to grim psychological outcomes. There was a study in Sweden between 1973 and 2003 with 224 sex reassigned persons, and they were all considered higher risks for mortality, suicidal behavior, and psychotic morbidity than the general population. Again, and the suicide in this group is 20-fold higher. So this is a big deal. Yeah. And if you find out somebody that's having this issue, again, you don't want to ask them a ton of questions. We're going to do some etiquette in a minute because it's becoming a bigger issue. And Dr. Judy's right. I mean, if you know somebody at work, I mean, you have to treat it with really, really be very, very delicate.
And again, let's go back to general humanity, which is being humane, which is a really important part of healing others and healing oneself is to become part of this human race, right? We have to become a more humane race and stop judging and criticizing and devaluing people and bring on acceptance, not to the point where you're accepting everything and you become what I call a permeable membrane and anything goes. That's not what I'm getting at. However, when someone, after years and years of struggling with their gender identity, is in a deep, deep, dark depression because they're not being authentic in their own skin, and after all, this is their life, then with whatever they're struggling with and all of the psychotherapy that they're going through and all the medical research that they're going through, then it would be nice if we could then give them a little bit of a support system and a sense of being welcomed.
Well, absolutely.
Because it is their life. It's not your life. It's their life.
And Caitlyn Jenner even said that. She said that, I couldn't wait to do this anymore. I couldn't do it any longer. Here I am, 65 years old,
Right.
and I've been living a lie. If I ended up on my deathbed and I didn't go through this process, my whole life would have been a lie. And he just wanted to be genuine and vulnerable, and take the plunge, make the decision, and do it.
And
even though it was a very, very long time in coming.
And Walt, as you were talking about being competitive, I was looking at the pictures that Annie Leibovitz took of her. And first of all, Annie is such an artist,
she's
and
amazing.
she is just she's just so talented. And so when you see the cover of Vanity,
it's out this week. You can get it now.
Yeah, and so speaking of competitive, he got the best photographer to do the shoot, and I'm sure he got the best plastic surgeon, and so the best of the best of the best. And when you look at the picture, my jaw dropped. All I could think of was, wow, she's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I want her plastic surgeon.
Well, probably in the neighborhood.
Yeah, probably in the neighborhood.
So with our little time left, wanted to do some do's and don'ts as it relates to this, because if you can counter it, okay, now what? Because it's becoming more of an issue. First, there's 5 do's and don'ts, I think, and maybe a couple more. Respect the terminology a transgender person uses to describe their identity. Okay. The transgender community uses many different terms to describe their experiences. Respect the term transgender, transsexual, queer, cross-dresser, etc. a person uses to describe themselves. If a person is not sure of which identity label fits them, well, best, then give them some time and some space to figure it out. Don't tell them which term you think they should use. You wouldn't like your identity to be defined by others, so please allow others to define themselves. Second, don't make assumptions about a transgender person's sexual orientation. Gender identity is different than sexual orientation, as Caitlyn said. Sexual orientation is about who we're attracted to. Gender identity is about our own personal sense of being male or female, or something outside that binary. Transgender people can be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or straight. Third, if you don't know what pronouns to use, ask. Be polite and respectful when you ask a person which pronoun they prefer. Then use that pronoun and encourage others to do so. If you accidentally use the wrong pronoun, apologize quickly and sincerely and move on. The bigger deal you make out of that situation, the more uncomfortable it is for everyone.
I love that tip. I think it's really it's so respectful, and that's really for everyone who's now going to be meeting people in the future who are expressing themselves in that way. We need some tips on how to be around that person.
Absolutely.
Because then there's going to be the sense of what do you call, how do you address the person? So we're needing to learn a whole new way of being around this,
and a whole vocabulary.
Vocabulary, yes.
Fourth, don't you dare ask about transgenders person's genitals or surgical status. You don't ask them if they've if you don't ask them if they've had the surgery or if they're pre-op or post-op. Just don't go there.
However, if you are considering having the surgery, please, please, please do tons and tons of research. And this is not an area where you want to spare the bucks. You don't want to compromise on this. And so any question that you have about the surgery and how the nerve endings will be and whether or not you're going to be able to have sexual intercourse, for example, and how that might feel. And I'm sure that the surgery in and of itself will bring on a slew of questions. And these are the kinds of things that you must ask your doctor. And I suggest that you interview people who have gone through the surgery if you're considering going through the surgery, so that you can ask someone who's actually experienced this. There's nothing to substitute for that.
Absolutely not. And actually, one article states, and this is the guts of this one, before surgery, I was required, this is from a person's perspective that went through the whole thing and did it just a little earlier than Caitlyn Jenner did years ago in 1980. Before the surgery, I was required to be evaluated by 2 psychiatrists and a psychologist. This is something that is absolutely absolutely critical. This is spoken by somebody who actually made the decision and actually went through the whole process, the surgery included. No surgery should ever be undertaken lightly for any reason other than is absolutely necessary. Genital surgery is irreversible. You cannot put that toothpaste back in the tube, so you want to make darn sure. So,
and more than an evaluation, I think that an exploration is very, very important. It's just one thing to be evaluated. How about the part where you take a year or two or more to talk about what's behind it, what the motivation is, what the fears are, what the expectations are, and so on, and really have the opportunity to live that gender before you do the surgery, which, as Walt, you said, is irreversible.
Yeah, it's
right.
you only do that once. And the fifth one is you do not ask the transgender person what their, quote, real name is. For some, being associated with their birth name is tumultuous, source of anxiety. So, or it simply puts their life they wish to leave behind.
And so there's an area where it raises my therapeutic ears to think that if someone is having a major reaction to a wound because they've been traumatized, they've been sexually molested, abused, and so on, and they have an actual aversion toward the person of the sex that abused them. See, that's where exploration is really, really important and necessary, because you don't want to make decisions that are absolute, that come from a wound, unless you've really resolved it, or unless you can even recognize that it's a wound and then say it is what it is and I choose it anyway. It's got to be a process. There's another topic that I don't know if you have an article on, but little children who declare that they want to be male and female. And I know there was a YouTube about I watched it was a YouTube about a little girl, I think. She wanted to become a little boy, and the parents were very loving and accepting, and she was scared that the parents would stop feeding her or kick her out. And I'm not saying that there aren't exceptions, but when children are going through a phase of development, their sexuality is also morphing. So it's really not necessarily the best idea to do something radical unless that child is older. So,
well, I agree. There was one situation. I have a friend who's a school nurse, and there are 4 students in one school. If you can imagine, elementary school.
How old are these children? Elementary
school. Okay. And one boy was so wanting to change, he actually took pains to cut his penis off.
Oh, my God. Okay,
7 years old.
Wow.
7 or 9 years old.
Yeah, that's tragic.
Right. One last thing here is when someone tells you they're transitioning, you know what? Just be supportive, even if you do not understand.
Or even if you do not agree.
Yeah, or agree.
It's not your life.
No. Even if it's difficult to overstate how much trust such a disclosure places in you.
Yes.
Right? Because, again, we've talked about this, it's a gesture of warmth and acceptance. Thank you for telling me. You have my complete support. Because, again, this may be at work, and they may not have told everybody. They're just
or anybody,
and they're just kind of testing the waters, right? They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to be ostracized. Yeah. So again, you just have to honor it and respect it.
Yeah, and I just want to go back for a moment about children, because it's just such as parents, we're so responsible for the outcome of our children's lives. So if you have a child that's expressing the desire to have surgery or threatening to cut his penis off, you really need to bring that child to therapy and help that child understand where these feelings are coming from, and explore. Usually it is a good idea to let that child live with their genitalia until they mature. As a psychologist, we don't diagnose somebody until they're adult. We don't slap on a label of transgender, this, because children are growing, and some people actually grow out of this feeling. So
yeah, they do.
Some people, I'm not saying all people, but some. And so you don't want to err. You whatever you do, err on the side of conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I mean, even in
information.
And even in Caitlyn Jenner's case, she's been dealing with this all her life. She's 65 years old and hasn't even had the genitalial, the reposition, sexual reorientation procedure done. She's open to it, hasn't decided whether she's going to or not. At this point, she's leaning not. But again, here's the case, her whole life, and she's not diving into the surgery.
No, she's not.
No, she's going to wait.
And also for those of you who have parents who made the transition over, there's a sense of grief and loss there that nobody really emphasizes, which is the fact that if you had a mother who birthed you, right, and she had a vagina, and now he has a penis, and he has testicles, and he doesn't have the breasts that you nursed off of, that's quite a big change for you. And so I'm imagining that change will precipitate a lot of triggers, because that's how life happens, is people do things and then other people get triggered, and we have to deal with our own hurts and wounds and reactions. And it's not so much what people do, it's what we do with it. Except that it's really hard when it's your parent, because we're so identified with having a mother that looks like this, or father that looks like this. And we've done a lot of shows on plastic surgery, and hopefully I'll be on that episode Botched really soon on E-Entertainment.
Stay tuned.
I'll tell you all about it when it does come out. But even with plastic surgery and changing somebody's nose or changing somebody's breast size, even that is a trauma and an adjustment, whether it be a positive or negative thing. It's still an adjustment. So this adjustment is just a mega adjustment.
It's a mega adjustment.
Yeah.
And that brings us, you talk about change, that brings us to the tune we're going to shrink. And that's about all the time we have. And that is Changes by David Bowie. We thought we'd pick one a little older since Caitlyn's a little older. So I'm going to read the lyrics, and then Dr. Judy's going to interpret it from the mind map psychological perspective. And then, of course, we're going to close out with a song. I still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild. A million dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made. It seemed. I mean, you want to go from there? Sure.
So I'm gonna shrink this tune from the point of view of people like Caitlyn, that, you know, sometimes at the end of the journey they wondered why they were waiting until age 65 to do this. I don't know what I was waiting for, and maybe this person was trying everything and they kept running into these dead ends and still coming up with, I want to be the opposite gender.
It seemed the taste was not so sweet, so I tuned myself to face me, but I never caught a glimpse of how the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test.
So I think this is a time when the person's talking about looking into the mirror, okay, and having realizing that they never really got a glimpse of the inauthenticity, the faking, and realizing that and taking a second glimpse here.
And then the chorus, changes, turn and face the strain. Turn and face the strain. Changes, don't want to be a richer man. Changes, turn and face the strain. You just gotta have to be a different man. Time may change me, but I can't trace time.
Wow, what a stanza here for this particular theme. Of course, there are many changes, and turn and face the strain of being changing, the stressors of changing. Don't want to be a richer man. It's not about better, richer, poorer. It's about really being different. And time may change the person, but the person, after all, has to be who they want to be.
Right. I watch the ripples change their size, but never leave the stream of warm impertinence, and so the days float through my eyes. But still these days seem the same, and these children that you spit on, and they try to change their worlds and immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through.
Right. So even if you advise them and consult, they're still aware of what they're going through, and even though there are different changes in people's lives, they never really leave the stream, meaning who they are at the core. That doesn't change. The stream doesn't change. There may be splashes of water escaping from the stream, but then they have to find that main line of the person that they are and stay with that.
Strange fascination fascinating me. Changes are taking the pace I'm going through. And then the chorus. Changes, turn and face the strain. Changes, oh look out you rock and rollers. Changes, turn and face the strain. Changes, pretty soon now you're going to get older. Time may change me, but I can't trace time. I said that time may change me, but I can't trace time.
And there's this line here that says, don't tell them to grow up and out of it. Like, get off of it. They're not going to grow out of it. And it is what it is. It's just that we've got to face the fact that we've got to turn and face the strain. It's very straining to go through this.
Yes.
Changes are very straining, yet they could be rewarding and hopefully authentic to the person who took the pathway to make the changes.
And that's our show, folks. Thanks so much for participating, for listening, for checking us out on Stitcher. And if you're over there on Facebook, be sure to like us on Facebook at Dr. Judy WTF, or go watch a show on YouTube. We're expanding that laundry list of shows we've done. And I'm Walt Luss, your host, with Dr. Judy Rosenberg. If you have any questions, queries, or comments, or even want some notes from the show or any show, you can reach us at info@drjudywtf.com. And until next time, God bless everyone.
And my time was running wild, a million dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet. So I turned myself to face me, but I've never caught a glimpse how the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. It's gonna have to be a different man. Time may change me, but I can't trace time. Sides, but never leave the stream of warm permanent sand. So the days float through my eyes, but still the days seem the same. And these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't tell them to grow up out of it. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Where's the shame you've left us up to her now?